Hello, and welcome to Exploring Axon, a podcast where we discuss Axon Framework, Axon Server, and their ecosystem. I am your host and a software developer at Axonic, Sarah Torrey. In this episode, I spoke with Andy Whitaker, a software developer who has been working with several teams in the past years to move from monolith systems into microservices. He shared with me some of his success stories, but also many of the challenges that he's faced in the past projects. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and let's have a listen. Hi, Andy. How are you today? Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Sarah. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you, and I'm so excited to talk about some of the topics that have interested me since the moment you and I talked last year. So a lot of questions that I'd love to chat with you. So I appreciate you giving me the time to go over those today.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be here. This is awesome.
Awesome. Very good. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're located at.
Sure. My name's Andy Whitaker. I've been a software developer for over 20 years. I work right now out of Indianapolis, Indiana, where I live. My background is I started off in electrical engineering. I went to school for that, and in my senior year, I took a couple of computer software design classes and realized I should have been a computer science major. and then
Okay.
But I went ahead and graduated, and I went out to Nevada, and I started building radios for rockets. And wasn't
Nice.
really it was interesting, but wasn't as enjoyable as I wanted it to be. And I eventually got a job as a quality test engineer for a slot machine company, being in Nevada. And I started learning writing building like test equipment that use software and hardware to test
Okay.
things. And I started getting really into the software stuff and enjoyed it. And then my wife was going to school for a master's at the local university. And she comes home one day and says, "Hey, I got you a job. You're going to teach my
Okay.
professor Java programming. He's going to pay you." I go, "What?
Okay.
I don't know." And she says, "You know how to write code." I said, "But I mean, I know how to write C++ code." But
Right.
anyway, I met with him.
Surprise.
I met with him, and he offered me a job to he needed Java was coming up as like Java 2, and he wanted someone to teach him Java programming so he could teach his students to use it for image processing. And
Okay.
I and so I spent, my nights learning how to write, codecs and stuff for images and things in Java and learning Java. And I helped him get going, and then he told me, "Hey, you should teach a class at community college." And I said,
Okay.
Okay, why not?" And so I signed up to do that, to teach Java at community college,
Right.
and I had a kind of a family emergency, and I couldn't do it. I had to cancel,
Oh.
and
Hmm.
so I just went back to working on the slot machine stuff, and then about 6 months later, I had a call from Intuit. Um, they moved to town, and they were looking for Java develop they were looking for someone to teach Java development to their software developers, and they got my name from the community college, and I taught so I thought, "Okay," and they paid me to teach them Java
Right.
stuff, and that was the most humbling experience because I was with a lot of hardcore software developers, and they grilled me.
Wow.
I
Okay.
mean, they just roasted me on stuff,
So that was a
and
good learning opportunity for you too.
it was, and in the end, it worked out because they hired me. They offered me a job at the end of my
Oh,
teaching
that's
thing.
great.
They hired me as a
Hmm.
junior Java developer, and I jumped on it.
Yeah.
And it was great because I worked with a lot of really smart people, and we were all they were moving to this new technology, I was helping them, and we worked together really well, and I learned a lot. And so I worked there for a few years, and then we decided to move back to Indiana because our family was growing, and moved back, and I started contracting, and through contacts I had made, I ended up, getting a contract position at Boeing in Seattle.
Wow.
And I started working there remote, and then I was on Pacific
Hmm.
time, and then another friend I had made was working at the state of Indiana on a project,
Okay.
and he said, "Hey, what are you doing in your mornings?" I said, "Sleeping." And he said, "Well, if you want, you're on Pacific time, so why don't you come in and work in the mornings and fix bugs? We have a lot of bugs in our software. Why don't you come
Okay.
in here and fix
Uh
things?"
huh.
So I started working mornings for the state of Indiana, and I'd work 11 to 8 for Boeing, and then I work in any evening hours I could get for the state. And I did that for like 8 years,
Oh,
working
wow.
2 jobs like that,
And
and,
then you, of course, parented
I'm a
too, and
parent, yeah, I've got 2
all
kids, I
of
have a
these
very
things too.
supportive wife,
Yeah.
and,
Wow, that's amazing.
so eventually I left Boeing and, I moved on to a different state agency, the FSA, where I started working on the microservices stuff. I left FSA at the end of, October, in the department, at DWD where I started, they asked me if I wanted to come back, and I did, and I've been there now, and they wanted me to they saw my Axon,
Right.
my video
Uh,
cast from our,
on the yeah, with the conference, yeah.
from the conference,
Yeah, yeah.
they wanted to know if I would come back and help do that there, and so that's what I'm doing now. I'm leading a new team, and we're getting going, and we released our first microservices, 2 weeks ago. Um, they aren't event driven yet and stuff like that. But we're on the path, and we're getting there.
Small
So
steps, yeah,
so,
small steps.
well,
So, I so you've been in the field obviously for a long time, and you mentioned at some point microservices. So what got you interested? Was it something that you came
it
across on your own, or did somebody sort of
it was because
introduce you to that?
it was, mostly, when I read a lot about what's going on, but mostly it's because of a bunch of failures we were having. It was,
Okay,
we in 27 when I worked at the FSA at first, we were building monoliths and was supporting legacy stuff, and we had a big monolithic project we had built, and we had tried doing a more of a distributed architecture with it. We had separated out the UI from the back end stuff, and it wasn't a failure, I just wanna say that. It was just harder than it had to be, and we were late by a month. We had, like, 1,000 defects in that last month, and it was because every time we touched something, we'd break something, and the code was hard to understand, and so when it was over with, we it was a success for the business, and they gave us a new project. They said, "Hey, modernize this other web portal we have." And we said, "We don't wanna do the same thing we just did." We were tired of it, and, my colleague Joe Corey and I, he was a system architect. We started reading the Domain Driven Design book by Eric Evans again, and we started really looking at different ways of doing stuff, and we decided that we were gonna try something different. And so I started doing proof of concepts on domain driven design. I started doing some small proof of concepts, and then I started reading about CQRS and event sourcing, and I thought, "Oh, that's really interesting, and and maybe we should do something like that." 'Cause and I did some more proof of concepts, and the team kinda liked it. The ideas coming out were made things easier to understand, and then we said, "Well, we can't just build our home brew event sourcing engine, that's gonna be crazy." So we started looking around, and we found Axon that way. We started looking for a solution that gave us microservices, Axon Framework, and so we found those solutions. We started doing some proof of concepts, and that's how we got into microservices.
right. And Axon for that matter. So and time wise, when was this about? Was it just a few years ago, or was it?
Yeah, it was July of 2017, was where we started. That's where we had the big retrospective, and it was through August through September, we started doing proof of concepts. We were doing proof of concept.
Yeah, so the timing is pretty cool because I think that's right about the time that Axon actually became a company,
Yeah.
and they created the company and they started with the server bit after that. So that's really neat. Um, so going back a little bit, just slowing down in the process that you just explained, I want to ask you some key things that I thought were interesting. So you, of course, as a software engineer, and Joey is an architect, and um, you both been working for a while together,
Yeah.
leading these different projects and so forth. And so you were, I'm assuming, deep into this system, into this monolith,
Yeah.
and as code aspect of it per se. So when you realize that, okay, we want to modernize this, we want to try something different because this is not working out for us. So let's look at microservices. Did you have to go back and change things through the sort of architectural overview of this whole system? But or did you automatically go and change the code immediately?
We
I
we
mean, how
we
was the
we
process?
we looked at different patterns. We talked about using, like the Strangler pattern. We thought, "Well, let's build up little microservices and take out features." but we were like, "Okay, what's the bounded context? What are the things" we started trying to think about major design. What are the where are aggregates at and stuff? And it was such a mess. It was like
Yeah, I can imagine.
it was like we couldn't even we were really hard trying to get our head around it, and so we just basically said, "Let's just rewrite it. We're not gonna try to slowly evolve this one. We're just going to do a rewrite." And that
So with that particular system, did you like start it over
yeah.
in microservices?
Yes, we just
Okay.
started
All
over
right.
and we started from scratch. We went, 'cause we wanted to use Axon, we wanted to use event driven stuff, so we it was on me to figure out how to best to do that, and I was reading and I said, "Let's try event storming." And
Yeah, I
I
was gonna say, walk me through the process.
yeah,
What did you do? Yeah.
we had a requirement well, the good thing is we knew the system, we knew the requirements, we knew what we had to build, which was an awesome thing. We just had to rethink how we did it, and so we started I was Mr. Post-it note 'cause I basically I got a bunch of different color sticky notes, and I went in and we covered the wall with sticky notes and color coordinated them, and just we did event flows and trying to figure out how we try to capture names and try to focus on vocabulary, and we try to do things that way, and it was hard because none of us had ever done it before, and and that was, one of the things that we liked about the Axon framework we had was because we were struggling with how do you build a DDD system? How do you organize this stuff? And then we needed a roadmap or something that said, "Hey, here's an example of how to do it," you know? And so we were able to we used our proof of concepts from the accent stuff and to help us figure out, okay, this is how you're supposed to structure it. And then we started doing the event storming and then we took the event storms and then we worked backwards to commands and then we figured out, okay, what are the aggregates that make this stuff up? And we got it wrong. I mean, our first services, we could have done a lot better, but every time we did it, it was we learned. But so 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 our end process was basically take the requirements and we did event storming, work back to commands and aggregates and value objects, and then we figured out where they lived in the ecosystem. So
So when you modeled this new system, did you use a specific modeling process, or was event storming basically what you
it
went from?
it was event storming is what we went from. That was our big modeling process. We had tried different things. Working at the state, they buy tools and stuff. We use these different tools to use, and we just stuck with paper on the on the wall, and we take pictures
Okay.
of it, and then we just go and we put it into a diagram, and we just drew them into diagrams, and the good thing was, what we found out later on is because we worked as a team, we had everybody in there doing it together, and we we could take it off the wall. We could throw away, and I could ask one of the developers to come in, and they could draw it. They could draw the flow, and it was, like, amazing that we were able to the word from the DDD is that shared understanding, is that it started happening. We were able to individual people understood how it was supposed to work. And then I didn't need to lead those meetings anymore. We had other people on the dev team. They could say, "Oh, we gotta work on this feature. I'm gonna do the event storming." And they would go and do it. And they would run the event storming and figure it out and then bring it back to the team and review it and stuff. And we talk about it. And we started building that up. But we didn't have any real big defined process. It was just the event storming and doing some, design I mean, to putting things into, like, a
Trial and
chart.
error,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Of
and then we
course.
just went and built
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So with the event storming that you did with obviously your team, did you involve other parts of the business as well? Like, was it just the developers that were kind of working on this event storming, or did you bring in from the business side as well?
We brought in, the business side. At first, we didn't, because we knew the requirements well enough, but about one of our success stories was about halfway through 2018, well, not halfway through, about 3 months into 2018, we were given another project from another agency called Achieve, and, it was totally unknown. Requirements were still being worked out, and so we worked really close with the business to figure out the requirements, and we used the event storming process to find the requirements. We help, they said, "This is what we need to get done. This is what's in the," 'cause the way the state works, this is the law. Make something that meets that law, and it's like,
That
oh.
works for their law. Yeah, exactly.
So so
And of course, you can't change the law. I mean, if you want to, it takes 20 years. So
yeah,
good luck
yeah,
with that.
it's hard to change those requirements, and so
Right.
we'd worked with them, and the event storming helped
Mhm.
flush out it helped us get on the same language with the business, and we were able to convince them that we were gonna build stuff that they could look at the code and at least understand. We could talk about it together, and that was a win, and we I mean, we spent a month with just doing the event storming for Achieve and coming up, throwing it away, and starting again because we come into these different roadblocks, not roadblocks, but we things would pop up, and then, "Oh, we didn't think about this," and you have to start thinking about it. And, um, eventually, it solidified enough that we were able to separate things into phases because we knew we had to be live at the end of the year, and there was no way we could get it done. But we were able to work with the business and say, "Hey, we can build these services, this functionality by the end of the year, and then we can phase in the rest of it in the next year," and we got go ahead with that. But the thing was, we were able to do that. We had the business working with us, and we got their
Right.
buy-in through the events.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
So when you were event storming, and as you mentioned, some of the requirements would change, or maybe the business side would realize, hey, this is not the way we want to do it. Let's change it so that it meets our requirements a little bit better. Were you in the process of also coding as you were going through this, or
Oh, yeah.
did you just give a block of time or several months, say, okay, let's figure out one, what are the real requirements are before we start getting
W
into code?
we had a pretty good understanding by the start of June what we were trying to build, and but it changed a lot because we did frequent demos, and we did a lot of, we worked real close with our testers. They were also in those meetings, and so it helped them get ahead of testing. And so we were able, but things changed, and so we would just pivot, and, first we weren't live yet, so it was easy to make real low level changes, it was okay. Um, we were able to, yeah, we were just able to roll with it. We did like a sprint scrum thing, but turned more in like a Kanban approach where it was basically, "We're working on this today. Oh, this is now the new priority. Work on that tomorrow." And we would just, and as we were going, as we were going, our operations team was building out our CI/CD pipelines. We didn't have anything like that before, and so it was getting to the point where we were deploying constantly into our test environments, and that gave us a lot of feedback right away. So so we were able to make changes quickly. But we would go back and change the event flows if we had to. But over time, it calmed down a lot. It didn't change much once we got going.
Which is a good thing because it's always nice to have some time to work a little bit more calmly. Now, during that time that you were experimenting and changing several different things, was there ever a time where you had to go back and change something monumentally within the design of your system that needed to be changed? The business required it.
We had issues where, not monumental changes, I don't think. We had issues where we realized that we had, um, uh, things in the wrong bound context, or we had things we started off putting more than one aggregate in a microservice, and I wanna talk about that. And it realized that it didn't need to live there, and then we had issues where it made more sense that we should pull that out, and so we had changes like that where we started pulling things apart. We had we did have one monumental change with it when it was not really a monumental change for the business, it was more from a technical side of things. We weren't using the event tracking processors because we were doing proof of con we were trying just to get going, and so our first microservices weren't using the event tracking processors, and and um, and that had some side effects we weren't expecting because things were a little bit slower. We had a harder time with eventual consistency. We had some different issues that came up, and so we went back and rewrote the services to use the track. That was our biggest monumental change, I think, to the architecture, was that we went back and we changed what we'd done before to use those. and it saved us. I think it saved us down the road, but, uh, but as far as the overall architecture, we just stuck with it. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So, going into a little bit more team building process, I
yeah,
guess you want to call it that. So, when you're working from a perspective of, okay, we're working with this system, which is a monolith, it's probably an older system, and you have your developers who probably have been working on that
yeah.
system for a long time. And then here comes Andy with all his new ideas and wants to change things around, right?
Yeah.
How do you convince the team to go along with it? Was there any sort of point in time where you thought, well, this is not going to happen because there are some people who are really hell bent on doing things a certain way?
Yeah, we had that. We from the developers
Tell me more.
from the developers, a lot of it was JSP, JavaScript. So one thing was UI changes becoming. We went to Angular. So the developers had to learn Angular. But good thing is developers are excited about learning new things. Usually, it's just when you have pressure to get something done right away, it's hard, and you feel that pressure, and it goes back. Well, what if I could do this faster if I just did it this way? The old way. And then we had to push back on why don't we just make a monolith? Because people would read too, and they say, well, people say you shouldn't go to microservices. You should just build in a monolith that's structured better, and then go to monoliths later. I mean, go to microservices later. And so we had that discussion, and it was we came back at it and said we know us. We will just build the same old stuff we always built. We need to build better habits. And the way we're going to build better habits is to go through the pain of doing something different. And we knew from ourselves that if we went down the road of just building another monolith, even if it was kind of structured better, we would think it was just we would fall into our old habits of, "I gotta get something done now. I'm gonna break the rules just this once." And then you're gonna break the rules the second time and the third time. So, we held our ground and said, "We're gonna build it with microservices, even if the conventional wisdom is not to do that." So, we had that kind of pushback. We had pushbacks also, a lot from at first from the DBAs. You know, they were part of our development team, and one of our problems in my opinion was that we built systems that was database centric. It was all database driven design versus domain driven design. And so going to this new thing where our state was captured in events, and all we were doing was projecting views of things was hard to accept. You know, it was a hard thing to accept that you couldn't just go into the database and change something to fix a bug. If you wanna really fix it, you need to go through the front door, you have to create a new event to fix it, and that was hard to sell. That was originally, that was hard to sell, and it was, it in it worked. I mean, eventually, we just went through the pain of, like, "Oh, it doesn't work when I change the database that way, I have to go and make a new command to do it." But what it did is it made the team start thinking about how to roll back things, how to change things when it happens, how to really understand your system. And so that was another thing from the dev team that then the third thing was the operations, was selling operations on, "Oh, we gotta maintain this new architecture out there. Instead of just having one app I deployed, now I got 20 things out there running," you know? And
Exactly, right.
how do you manage that? And again, it was always, "Hey, this is exciting to try this." And then as soon as you hit a roadblock, "Is this worth it? Is this gonna be worth it?" And we just kept, like I said, I worked with a good team of people, and we would just work together on getting through those issues. So why don't we just fix the CI/CD pipeline? Why don't we do things to make operations easier? And then by doing that, we became a DevOps team. We didn't set out to become a DevOps team. We became one because developers learned how operations worked and learned their pain. And operations learned what we were trying to do better. Before we were siloed, we would just throw code over to the operations team and they would deploy it. But by doing it this way, we had we had to understand what each other's job was. We didn't always, I mean, developers were doing operations stuff, but they had to understand what operations needed. And we worked hard to make sure that our code did what they needed it to do. And we made sure that it could work. And so that was a big transformation part. It just kinda happened on the side. We didn't set out to do it. It just fighting pain
But it's the good side effect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
was a very good side effect.
that's awesome. So, and now I have to ask the similar question from the business side of things. Was there a
Ooh,
point where the business side came and say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what are you doing?"
that was, like, every day. That was every day.
Or was it easier for them in a way because then they had to say too, right?
Well, we had a lot of pushback at first. We
Mhm.
it was about hard sell, especially since at first there's not much to see. There isn't much to see. They go, "Well, what are you doing? It's taking so long," and then they get reports that, "Oh, the services are not they aren't passing their tests or they aren't working right." And then it was like, "Why don't we just do what we used to do?" And to them, the business doesn't care really how you build it. They just want certain attributes. And what the turning point was, we did demos, and we had a turning point. We did a demo. We finally had a use case where we had, like, 4 or 5 services running with a front end, and someone could register, they could do their application, and we went through a demo with the business, and we said, "Oh, look, our two-factor authentication code is alphanumeric. The requirement is supposed to be numeric I mean, numbers. Okay, that's a defect. That's a defect. Okay, then we kept on with the demo, and then while that defect was going on, we fixed the defect, and we deployed it while the demo was going. And then we circled back around,
Oh my
and
god.
we showed them that it was changed, and then we proved to them
Yeah.
that we had changed the code in that last 10 minutes, and it had deployed, and the system had stayed up. That was
And they were sold, I'm sure.
that was it. That was it. That was the point where things turned
That's amazing.
and one of our biggest detractors at the time, he became one of our biggest fans because then he would go to meetings with the business and he'd have to coordinate deploying all the state's applications at one time in a weekend because everything had to be working together. And they ask you, "Okay, how long will it take you guys to get deployed?" We can deploy it tomorrow morning. Whenever we'll
Yeah,
do it.
amazing.
We don't have to be
So
down
you
all
don't have to give them,
weekend."
like, 2 months from now. Yeah,
So he
which
became
is
he
great.
became like a hero, and
Yeah.
so that was one of the big selling points for it. What one of the bigger problems we had selling was eventual consistency. That one, the people, the users, the testers, they were so used to having when they hit submit on a button, they put information and they hit submit, having to wait, 20,
Right,
30 seconds
right.
for a
Well, everything
transaction to
processes,
happen.
yeah.
And then it continue, and what we were doing, they hit submit, and they could keep on going, and usually when things were small, the results were there right away because it was so quick, but once we went to production, we got issues and say, "Hey, users aren't seeing their changes, they're saving it, what's going on? The system's breaking," and by the time we went and looked, everything was caught up. "What are you talking about?" And so we went back and forth like a baseball bat trying to figure out who's talking, who's complaining about what, and it turned out it was not fast enough. It was fast, and it was fast, but wasn't they were still getting complaints that, "Hey, I did this, but I'm not seeing my changes." "Oh, refresh your screen." It's not really the refresh didn't do it, but it was, but if you just give it a few seconds, it's there. So they wanted us to put in the artificial delays on stuff, on the pages, and it's like, "Well, why don't we scale the system to make it faster? We'll try that."
Yeah.
And we went back to the Axon Framework, we used the distributed command bus, and we used, the event tracking processor. We scaled the query side and the command side, and the problems went away. They and and we did some smart things in the UI. We would do some quick checks. We'd hit an endpoint, make sure the data was there before proceed. We did some simple things, but getting their head around eventual consistency it was a hard thing for them to
Was a
understand.
big deal for
It
them.
was a
Yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So which is really amazing, and one of the things that, always fascinates me about, your success stories and, what you went through and convinced a lot of people to, "Hey, let's go with this new way of doing things. It's really good," is that you worked with the state, with a government agency, which a lot of times things takes a long time
Yeah,
to get done,
yeah,
and they're not used to changing things drastically. But then you were able to convince them,
yeah.
and that's really amazing, in my opinion. I think
It was
it's a big win for you all.
It was a huge one. It was a lot of roadblock. I mean, I don't wanna it wasn't that they were trying to stop us. It was like you said, it's things move slow, and like, one of our biggest things, one of the biggest hurdles, this sounds really silly, was we needed a way to see our logs. And and we had originally went to when I went to FSA, we said, "Hey, we need some kind of centralized logging platform, period. We need something." And they we said there's Splunk, there's Elastic, there's all these tools out there, there's QRadar, all these different tools out there. Pick one, let's go. We need something. And they couldn't make a decision on what tool to use for years. I mean, I was there for like 2 or 3 2 years, they couldn't make a tool, but when we went to microservices, the problem escalated because we had all these different things running, the logs, things were ephemeral, the logs were shifting, and we need to be able to see the system. So we just stood up Elastic on our own. It was free. We got our own storage, and we just did it ourselves. And we started building dashboards, and you could see this things moving through the system. And we could see, "Oh, wow, I can see my events moving through the system. I can see patterns and usage. I can see all this stuff." And that helped convince them to go buy a central because this
Yeah,
kind of stuff does
that's
work.
awesome.
And we never went use anything else. We stuck with our Elastic stuff, but it was a to me, it's like, this is a silly argument to be having. And for us, the good thing about we had open source stuff, we had free things, we could able to, low cost, do something,
Try things
try
out.
things out
Yeah.
and get things
Yeah, yeah.
moving, and then we could convince them, say, "Hey, this is worth buying. This is worth doing this." And we had all these little victories that just added up. And so
Which is really awesome. So, which brings me to my next question. So, obviously, you tried Axon Framework, and it was working out for the purposes that you were looking for. Did you at some point try out Axon Server as well? Did it work for you? If you did it not?
we didn't try it out. We didn't. We were happy with the Axon framework, and by the time we got to a point where I wanted to try it out, we finished building everything. So so it was gonna be a harder sell. Where I'm looking forward to trying it out is D2V. And so I'm laying the groundwork I've got the team to, register for, I think Steven's webinar is coming up. We're gonna go watch it, I think, and we're gonna move toward, I think I wanna try it out. Because I do think we had issues that I think maybe that server would have helped us with. Because one was scaling the tracking processors was kind of a manual process, which is easy to do. It's not hard to do, but it's a pain in the butt to do. And you don't if I could do it automatically or auto-magically, that would've just saved me headaches. Um, so I'm looking forward to trying it. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and I would be interested in maybe at some point in the future we'll have another talk about like so how was your experience? How did it work out? That would be fun to know. Um, so I understand now you're in a different team and you're sort of preparing your new team into going into microservices as well. Are you already there? Are you in the process? And if you're in the process, what are the challenges now?
We're facing some of the same challenges. We're in the process right now. Before I
Hmm.
got there, they had already built a couple microservices. They were trying to get them
Okay.
deployed. And the pandemic
So you
happened.
don't have to start from scratch all over.
Right, right. So when the pandemic happened,
Mhm.
they had to
Yeah.
bail on it for a while. So when I came there in November, they had already written them, but they didn't have a place to deploy them yet. So I stood up Kubernetes. I worked with them to stand up Kubernetes. And then, we got them deployed, and we started working through the CI/CD stuff, and we're still working through it's a different and this one, we have to keep the legacy system. It's not a rewrite. The legacy system is just massive. It is a massive, massive thing, and so it's gonna take a different approach. So we gotta take we the thing they did was using the strangler pattern. So they built a microservice and a strangler, and they're routing traffic to it. It's not 100% yet. So after this week, it'll be 100% traffic going to the new microservice. So they were able to get it out there, and at first it was doing 25% of the load, then it was 50% of the load. We're just making sure things are working, the logging's working. We set Elastic again. We got we and so we're gonna get through with that, and then the next step is, I have a big bucket of epics of services to start building, and so the next step is to get the team acclimated to what is our architecture gonna be, which I'm opinionated to be the Axon. underneath is gonna be the Axon Framework. They're all sold on domain-driven design, which is good. The new microservice was written using domain-driven design, so now it's putting something in place to help us do it better. And, the success with what I had to say helps sell that idea. So that's the next steps right there. What targets are some of our, and we might be not targeting things the users see at first, but things that are the back end processes. So we're gonna try to take it small, have small victories, and start convincing people that we can do this. So, yeah, we have
And are you doing this system event source as well,
yeah,
or
that's
yeah,
the
good.
plan. That's the plan. Again,
Yeah,
it's gonna be
good.
another, uh, convincing. I think I've got the dev team convinced. It's convincing other people because there's 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 misconceptions like, "Oh, it's all it's for is logging," which is not true, and one of the big wins we had at the state was we were able to play back the events and build new projections. We were able to build reporting after the fact that was still based on the time the event was created, which was crazy, which was all that metadata floated around, and you could build a report 6 months later, but it captured data that was that you could it was like it was happening at the time it happened 6 months ago. You could see it. And so it's more than just for logging purposes, the event source, and it makes it easier to think about the state of your system. It's easier to fix things, I think. Once you learn it, it makes it easier to fix it. The Saga stuff, what where this new project has a lot of batch jobs, things that run at night. And we had batch jobs on the old project, and we got away from them by just using sagas and by having triggers and things just moving through, and we were able to distribute stuff throughout the day in real time when it needed to occur, instead of having something at the end of the day, running a big query and say, "Oh, what needs to happen now?" and do it. We were so one of the things that's on the target is maybe start by replacing the batch jobs with event-driven microservices, because it's not really user facing. They don't It's not, you're not gonna see it so much, and it's a little bit safer and a way to gain traction.
It's a little bit in the background that you don't have to
Yeah.
exactly. Right,
So
right, right.
so that's the plan, in
Very
marching toward it,
interesting.
so
Yeah, yeah, that's exciting, Andy. It's always really fun to hear your adventures and what you're going through to gain the trust of the team and everybody in the business side to say, hey, this is actually going to work better for us and let's move this way. It's really nice. So we did talk quite a bit about some of the challenges and some of the wins, but to conclude, what do you think? What would you say the biggest challenge was for you, and the biggest win also?
the biggest, challenge, the thing I would do different, and I hate myself for saying it, we would not have used,
Oh
it
no!
was my idea, 'cause it was my idea. We had 2 things, it was my idea. One was to use MongoDB as our backend for the event storage. We wanted to use it for the query side because it's really wicked fast and drive the
Yeah,
screens, makes a lot of we'll just save stuff,
and it has some
and
flexibility.
that
Yeah,
had a lot of flexibility. I said, "Well, why don't we just use it for our
right.
storage engine too for the events?" Okay, why
Yeah,
not?
yeah,
And it's fast, it works great until things start to scale, and then we had issues with the sagas, not triggering every time they needed to, and it was because of that choice, and we did things to fix and Band-Aid and make it work better. I think, looking back, I would have said event storage should have been Postgres or something else. Query side, let's make it Mongo because it helped us with our screens. I wish looking back, I would have changed that, because we had a lot of
right.
I had a lot of headaches fighting with it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the other thing was, I don't wanna say this because I really like the technology. We used, JHipster, which is it's helped us build a microservice architecture because it had all these libraries and stuff that made it real easy to get going. And I really like the tech. I mean, we're looking at it right now to use it, but the thing that I struggled with, the team struggled with, is because it was very, not domain driven design centric. It was very, database driven design, and we wanted to move away from that. And by introducing that, the I kept having lots of battles with the team. Well, JHipster, let's just do this right away. And it's like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And and it's not that it's bad. It was not what we wanted to do. So we try to leverage both things. So we had the core of our stuff was all Axon wrapped around the JHipster microservice infrastructure to give us that gateway and stuff. So looking back, I think I could have looked at other options. And going forward, we're gonna look at other options, but the team is actually looking at Hipster and they're like, "Oh, this is really nice. It makes it easy to get going." It's like, "Yeah, it does, but there's some trade-offs. I don't wanna be fighting the same fights." And so I'm looking at, can we have the best of both worlds, or is there other options or something? And
Yeah,
and then I wanna look at Axon Server and see, is there a better thing to do? Because I wanna be fighting for storage and what database to use and stuff. And, is would it be easier just to try something different and go with that? So yeah,
absolutely.
so our first set of microservices we're building is we're gonna be exploring. It's gonna be kind of like an architecture, kind of like what is our canonical at least. And that's the good thing about microservices. It doesn't have to stay canonical. If it doesn't work, you build the next one differently.
Exactly.
It's easy to
You
change.
change it. Exactly.
Just change it,
Right, right.
but
Absolutely. Yeah.
but I'm trying to take a stab at it up front.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fantastic. And it's fantastic. So I really appreciate you sharing all these stories with me and taking the time to sort of go through the history of all these different projects that you've done and of course the challenges as well as the good side of things, which is always really nice to hear. So I appreciate the time, Andy.
No, you're
And
very
I can't
welcome.
wait to hear more about this project that you're doing in the future
No,
and hear more about
yeah,
those challenges and also wins,
yeah,
right?
I'll definitely keep in touch. I'll
Exactly.
let you know. I'll let you know.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Not a problem. Thank you. My pleasure. Bye bye. I hope you enjoyed my talk with Andy. Please tune in next time as I will discover more about Axon Server and how to set it up. Until then, have a great time and happy coding.